My dear brothers and sisters, today we have the story of Naaman. Both in the first reading and in the Gospel, Jesus also makes a reference to it. Jesus must have definitely read this story from the book of Kings. Naaman was the army chief of the king of Syria, a powerful kingdom. He was respected by the king and the people, very successful in his career. But he had a problem. He was a leper. He had leprosy, and we know in those days leprosy was considered as an incurable disease, and usually they were segregated from the community. He might have even lost his job. But he hears about the prophet in Israel who could heal him, and he goes over, gets healed. This is a simple story in simple steps. What does this story to tell us? There's a lot of meanings for this story. We'll just look at only a few things. How God acts in somebody's life. Naaman had everything. He was very, very powerful, but kind of infirmary, leprosy was his curse. And that becomes the instrument of him coming to recognize the true God. See, this can happen to every one of us. We may be successful, we may be happy, we may be having everything in life, but God may speak to us through some weaknesses to bring us closer to Him and bring us to faith. We have plenty of stories in history about it. Secondly, it's also interesting how God speaks. Naaman had no clue where to go to get a healing. But then God speaks through a little girl. And this is a slave girl. When he raided Israel, he captured some Israelites. There's one little girl who was made the servant in his own home. And she suggests, why don't you go to Israel? It's a maid servant speaking and the commander taking a heed of it. That was so good of him. Again, we have other servants speaking. He reaches Elisha's place, expected Elisha to come out and greet him and do some miraculous gestures to heal him. Nothing happens. Elisha sends a servant and gives him, hands over a message. Okay, you tell Naaman to go and wash in the river Jordan. He's angry. He left the place in his anger and pride. Then God speaks to him again through his own servants. Third time, the servants. They tell Master, if the prophet asked you very great things, extraordinary thing you would have done. In fact, he had come with, you have read, he came with quintals of silver, 2 talents of silver, several kilos, 6,000 gold coins, 10 very expensive vestments as a gift to the prophet. He was ready to buy the healing. Now the servants are asking, you are ready to pay so much for your healing, but now prophet asked you very silly, simple thing, and you don't want to do it. Fortunately for him, he listens to servants, takes the dip, gets healed. So, this gives us another lesson. It may not be through extraordinary events or people that God speaks to us. God often speaks to us through simple people, simple incidences, and very ordinary circumstances. And being open to God in such circumstances, that is the only way we can be healed, also we can grow in our faith. Now, what is the importance of these simple things in life? Often people nowadays, many people resist church. They are spiritual but not religious. They consider religion or religious rituals, activities as something less important or less human. They are more, that was for people when they were not educated, when they were poor, when they had no science. Now we have all the progress. I don't need all these rituals. I can directly connect to God. They call themselves, I'm spiritual, not religious. The number of people, nuns are growing, people who profess they are not religious. But as humans, we need the rituals and symbols to walk through. Here, dipping in the Jordan. Naaman asks, I have much bigger rivers with better water in my country. Why should I come all the way to dip in this Jordan, a small river, which is often muddy also? But that was the way God would work. It's symbolic of our baptism, just pouring the water and baptizing. People say, why can't I pray in my room? Of course you can pray in your room. Why should I go to church? It's another way we consider church as God's meeting place. Some people say, I confess my sins to God directly. Why should I go to a priest? After all, there are several priests who are sinners. They are also humans like us. But that's the way God intended for the remission of sins. So here, these kind of silly, ordinary practices, when done with faith, can have a great impact. It can heal us. In fact, this story is about every human being. It's not about leprosy. Because in the Bible, sin is called a leprosy. Or leprosy is symbolic of the sin. So if we translate this story to our own lives, it is simply about how God cleanses. Whenever Jesus healed a leper, he was not saying you are healed, but he used to say you are cleansed. So sin is something like leprosy. Leprosy eats into the flesh, corrupts the body, whereas sin corrupts the human person, human nature. And only God can cure sin. No human being, like leprosy, could not have been cured by any doctor. So let us turn to God with humble hearts. God doesn't need gold, silver, and God is not speaking through kings or big people or places. Let's make use of all these ordinary inspirations to be cured and cleansed of our sin. I think that is the most fitting thought for our Lenten season. May God bless.